Hello, welcome back to the channel. Today we're working on yet another coil spring. Can you believe it? This is the third one in like 2 months. Two on the Nissan and now the first one on the Audi. To be fair, it's the original spring, so it's 14 years old, so it's lasted quite well. It's quite windy today, so I'm sorry for any excess noise. I'll do my best to take it out in the editing suite. Right, so first job is to get this cover off. It came with a special tool which has long since gone missing, so I tend to use a thin Allen key like this and a set of pliers. It's really hard to do one-handed, so I'll yank this off and we'll come back to this. Right, we'll get the wheel nuts off. I'm not sure what size these are. This is a 19 impact socket. I think they're a 17, and obviously there's a locking wheel nut to do, so we'll get these all loosened off and then get jacked up and get the wheel off. Right, so we've got the wheel off. This is going to be very different from the Nissan. If you watch my last video, it's got a completely different mechanism for getting the hub off, which we're going to have to do. So we need to take out all this strut. There's a spring. It's broken kind of where my finger is there. It should go all the way round, and I can feel a broken end. So we're going to have to undo it at the top again, which is different. There's no 3-bolt thing on this, and there's a pinch bolt at the back here. Let's see if I can get a better shot of it for you. So see that bolt there? That goes all the way through a casting, which is all of this, the hub, and then I don't know if underneath there's a splitter. So anyway, we need to part the bottom of the strut here. It goes into the casting here. So I'm going to put a ton of WD-40 type stuff in there. We're going to undo the nut, and then we'll probably have to either hit this with a hammer, or I've seen on other videos where they get an SDS drill, effectively a hammer drill, and rest the chisel on here. And instead of lumping on it with a big hammer where you might actually break the casting, you can use the small vibration of the drill and wiggle that off the bottom. Then we've got the usual problem with getting the... We need to get the clip off the brake line, and we'll have to undo the anti-roll bar rose jointy thing, and there'll be things like I think this one here is the, yes it is, this is the ABS sensor which is on the back of the hub. We need to disconnect all this because all this is going to come out, and it's very rusty. Yeah, we have been discussing whether we ought to get rid of this car because of the amount of rust that it seems to have on it. I mean, even the drive shafts have got rust on. I mean, come on. Yeah, it's getting to be not economically viable. So we'll get the WD-40 out and we'll have a go at some of these nuts and then see if we can actually get it out to fix it. Right, the clip for the brake is very, very rusty and is resisting me. We might have to take the band off, which is held on by a nut and bolt at the back, but again, it's so rusty it might fall to pieces. We might end up buying some new bits from Audi on this job. We need to pull the 2 cable thingies out of the rubber grommets and take the plug off here to get it out of the ABS sensor. Not sure if you can see that. And I've got the nut loose on the back that holds the hub on. Lovely and loose this side, but even if I bray on this with a hammer, the bolt won't come out the other side because it's so rust welded in. So again, more lubricant, more gentle persuasion with hammers and things. Maybe have another go at it with the impact gun to see if we can get it out. The idea is we should be able to lower the hub with the brake disc and the caliper on down low enough to get this off the bottom of the strut, and then we just have to undo the nuts at the top to get the strut out. Then we get the spring out, blah blah, put it all back again. But rust is our enemy at the minute. We may even end up getting a new strut, I think, looking at the state of this one, because it's not very good. But we'll see how we go. It might clean up. Let's see how we go with getting things apart a bit more. Right, so far things are going way better than we deserve, considering the state of the car. We've got the little clip out. It's a spring clip, and it goes in that little slot there on the brake line. So what you do is you pull that in there, then the ferrule pulls through and the clip goes in between the ferrule and that bracket. So this has come out mainly because of wrangling with screwdrivers of progressive sizes to like twist in there and lever the clip out, which is there, which I should clean all this up with a wire brush, I think, before I put it back. Then what you do is that pushes through, and then the pipe is thin enough to get out the bottom. So that's loose. We've got the ABS doohickey off there. So to undo the clip, what you do is you push where my thumb's showing there. See that little ridge there, that metal piece? That pushes in, and then that just comes out. So I've got that out the way. So we're actually looking pretty good. The big deal now is to get the hub off this bottom piece. So where my finger is showing you that crack there, I'm going to keep spraying this with lube. And the other battle is to get the bolt out the back there. So I'm going to attack that now, see if we can get that out. Right, current update is the bolt. I managed to get the impact driver on it and spun it out a little bit. It doesn't seem to want to come all the way out. Now the way the strut fits into this bottom casting is at the back here. There's like a web on the strut. So there's a piece of metal that sticks out the back like a blade with a hole in it, and the bolt goes through that. Now I suspect there's maybe a bit of rust or something on that. So I think what I might have to do is, it goes that way okay, doesn't seem to want to come out this way without significant force. So I might cut the head off the bolt from this side and then tap it through with a drift, because I think it'll go out that way quite easily. So we need to get the bolt out, then we can tap on here, either with the lump hammer or, like I said before, you can try with an SDS drill with like a chisel bit in and push it down, using the hammer action of the drill to like impact it down. We'll try that next. So I've angled around the end off and then used a punch to knock the bolt out. You can see it's been kind of rust welded in, and then what we need to do now is apply some hammer drill action to get the casting off. I've hit it with a hammer. It does look like it's separating, so we'll have a go at tapping this down, and then we can decide whether this strut is savable or not. It might just need a wire brush attack, but we'll see when we get it off. Right, I'm hoping you can see that it's starting to part here. I'll give it a few hits with the lump hammer. I'm just going to with the old SDS drill. So I'm going to push that on the casting and vibrate it using the hammer function. And I've seen other people, it just slowly works its way down and then falls off. So we'll give that a try and then see if it works. Well, believe it or not, that works a treat. Look at the gap on there now. So hang on, I'm trying to hold 17 things at once here. So I've got the chisel just rested in there and then pushed down, and the vibration is breaking the grip on the hub, and down she goes. Right, so I'll carry on with this and we'll get the hub released. Right, my current problem is that to get the casting low enough meant that the drive shaft was hitting the anti-roll bar. So what I've got is I've got a crowbar hooked under the drive shaft, bending down the anti-roll bar, and it's hooked under the caliper, a nodger on the caliper. So I've still got a gap between the drive shaft and the anti-roll bar, and I think we're half, 3/4 of the way there. This is not easy. Right, the battle continues. We're getting there. These are just marks I put on. I'm going to rub them off with emery paper just so I can tell if it's actually dropping. I've put a spring compressor on the top, got it as tight as I can to try and take some of the pressure of the strut pushing down, which means it pushes it back into the hub casting. I'm sick of resetting the crowbar, so what I've done is I've got a bit of wood and just I've levered the anti-roll bar down and just jammed that in the way onto the bodywork to give me room under the dry shaft. We're nearly there. If I put my finger up the bottom of it, we're kind of like, the bottom's kind of like there. So another centimetre and a bit, and then it might come out. Maybe. Let's see. Yay! And what seems like hours later, it's out. Look, it's loose now. The only thing that's stopping it coming out now is the fact it's fastened in at the top. So we'll go up there now. So on the top here, you take this little cover off. That was that. And this is a 21. So we undo that, then this rubber doodah will come off. And then there's another nut under that that releases the spring. Now I've done this and it has come undone, but I'm going to have to do it with the spanner and the bloody X key again, just for that last bit. Okay, it's make do and mend time, because I haven't got a 21-inch spanner, 21 mil spanner, and if I did, it wouldn't reach down there. But I've got an old 21 mil socket, which I can get down the middle of. I haven't got a 7. I haven't got a number 7 hex key, but I've got a Torx which fits it really nicely such that I can turn it. So, because it's not tight, that in there, I'm now going to grab hold of the socket with these so it doesn't spin, turn the hex in the middle with that, and the nut should come off. Now I've got to be careful because when the nut comes off, the strut is free to hit the deck. I mean, it's resting on the hub casting, so it shouldn't go anywhere. So bear with me while I do this, because I certainly can't do this and film at the same time. Well, it never rains but it pours. I've got the top mount off, which looks like that. And as it did it, the socket fell off and disappeared into the engine bay. I did hear it fall all the way down and hit the under tray, so hey, great, I've now got to undo all the bloody nuts on the under tray to get my socket back. Unless I can see it maybe and grab it somehow. Right, so we should be able to get this out underneath now. Right, so it came out. The top mount's quite thin, and we've got the same deal. We've got a nut and the hex doodah, which thankfully has been covered up all its life, so I can get I can use my Torxy thing again. I'm going to reposition this to make the spring a bit smaller because it's still tightly hanging on. Looks like it's about to fail at the top. Yeah, and then we can get the spring off. Right, okay. Okay, so the spring's now off. I've put the nut back on there. What I used in the end was I have got a 21-inch spark plug spanner, and the rubber bit pushes out. So that would go all the way down the top mount. Let me show you what it is. It is. So that would go all the way in there. And then I did it again with the Torx in the top and unscrewed it. Took a while, but it's out. Spring is off. Looking at the state of this strut, I'm not sure whether I'm going to keep it. A brand new one where I live is about 97 quid. I'm not sure whether I should put this back on. I mean, look at the state of it. So when this continues, it'll be another day, probably tomorrow, because I need to go get a bolt to go through here because they're top to yield bolts. So I can't use the old one because I cut it off. And while I'm there, I'll probably get a strut as well. So, join me tomorrow. Okay, welcome back. It's some time later. There's been some issues to solve. I've got the spring back in. I'll probably take this back out and show you it in a minute. The biggest issue I've had are these things, the spring compressors. As you can see, the thread is, well, foobarred really. Yeah, I don't really recommend this type of spring compressor. They're not very expensive, which means they're not very well made. And what I find is you can especially see it there where it's all gone flat, where I'm moving my finger. And that's usually because that metal piece is there and it's so tight that what happens is this claw piece rotates like that way and it's pushing onto the thread. So the more you tighten it, the more it's ruining the thread. And I actually got to the point where I couldn't get one of these off. And I had to put this one on and impact gun it on to hold the spring while I angle ground the other one off. I'd cut through the thread to get rid of it because it just physically won't come off even with an impact gun. I then managed to get this one off. I've subsequently ordered this type. So it's got a little hook on the top which hooks around the top of the spring. It's got a little device here that hooks onto the bottom and holds it in place with this collar which you tighten up. It's got a little doodah here which means you can fasten two together, and I think that's so you can make them stay apart while you tighten it up, because these, when you tighten them, because the spring is like a helix, it tends to want to move around, especially if you're using an impact gun and you're vibrating it. It wants to work its way around the spring. So I think that's what that's for. I've not really used that for mine. I don't think I'm going to need it. What I need is I need the spring to be shorter so I can push the end of the shocker in to be able to get that into the hub. There's no way it's going to fit otherwise. I've seen other people take like the bottom ball joint out. I don't really want to be messing with that. The nuts are all rusty, and then if I make a mess of it, I've got to buy a new ball joint. Just delays the job even more. And you can see I've actually managed to get it in. You've got to remember, at the back there's this little webbing piece. See that bit there, like B-shaped thing? That has to go in the slot at the back, because there's a hole in that and there's a hole in the casting which you're supposed to line up and then put the big bolt through. I've got a new bolt from Audi. You shouldn't use those more than once. Once you've taken it off, throw it away. They're torque to yield bolts, which mean they stretch when you tighten them up. They're not really used to be used more than once. And they're only £7, you know, it's not like it's going to break the bank. So I've now got to push this shocker bottom down into the casting. There is, when I looked in the casting, there is like a shoulder at the bottom of it which you can feel with your finger, so you can't push it in too far. And when it's at the bottom, our hole should line up at the back. Now I don't know how I'm going to get it in, push it in. I might have to put a jack under the control arm here and push that up. That might probably do it, especially as I can now take these off and get that in the right place, because it's currently not. You know, if I push it, it's looking at the hole. I think if I take these off, that'll help pushing down. The spring will then push down and I can push up with the jack and hopefully get it in. Right, update time. I've got all the spring compressor doodahs off. The spring is sitting right in the cup at the top, and I've loosely got the nut and the cup on the top. I'll show you that later when we do it up, to hold it in place. While this was stuck out of the casting, I took that as a good moment to put the link bar, drop link I suppose it is, the drop link from the anti-roll bar back into the back of the shocker. That's a 17mm, and there is thankfully a spanner fitting on this side which you can put your spanner on to tighten it back up. I've connected back up the ABS connector. I need to just straighten out this with a pair of pliers. It's got bent while I've been messing around with it, and then that can plug back in that plug down there. And I need to just widen this back out a bit to be able to get the pipe in, because then that'll sit like that and we have to push that metal clip on to hold it in place. How did I get it in the casting? Well, believe it or not, as you can probably see from the chisel marks on the casting, I got it in place, sat in the top. I tried jacking it up underneath where the ball joint is, and it didn't go anywhere. You know, I could press the spring quite a bit, not enough pressure. So I thought, well, how did I get it off? Well, I got the trusty SDS drill out, just rested the chisel on the casting and let it vibrate against the casting, and it slowly sank down into the casting until it hit that little shoulder I was talking about at the bottom. That works brilliantly. I don't know how I would ever have got that back in, to be honest. Last one is the pinch bolt, which I got from Audi. That's an 18mm. It'll be quite stiff to get the nut on because I think it's got some thread locky stuff on the threads, and we have to do that up. I think on the internet it said 60 Newton meters plus a quarter turn, so I think that's to do with the stretchy thing. So we'll test that. I just need to sort that out and sort that out with the pliers and get that clip back in. Right, we're nearly there. We've got the brake cable back in, push the little clip in. You just have to like tap that in with a hammer gently so it slips in that little slot there. That's nice and secure. The only thing that's fighting me now is the ABS plug. Doesn't seem to want to plug all the way down, so I can push it, and there's a little hooky thing there that the hole has to cover, and I can't physically push it all the way down, so I'm going to investigate that. We've done the top mount like we did before with the socket in and then Allen key or torque, whichever you can get to fit. I gunned it on a little bit till it stopped tightening up and was rotating, and then just did the rest by hand, and then there's a little cover that goes on that, so that's done. So that's done at the top. We're done here. Brake lines in, ABS to sort out and then clip into the clips, and the pinch bolt at the back. So I've torqued that up to 60 Newton meters plus a quarter. It does seem fairly tight, so that's good. And then all it is wheel on, car down, and off back to the MOT station again. So I think that's about it. I am going to put some newspaper inside here and dust this off with a bit of paint, because I've scratched it quite a bit with my multiple attempts to get it back in. I don't want it to go immediately rusty, so I'm just going to paint that up and probably paint the bit here that I've scratched as well. Well, that's about it. So if you've enjoyed this video, if it's helped you in any way, please like, subscribe, and all that good stuff. And thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next film.